it out. So it's good to see you all here. So why don't we just take a couple minutes and settle in as everyone begins to arrive. And so I'm going to invite you to feel your body and just notice right here, right now, what's arising in your consciousness. Where are you at right now in this moment in history? Can you give yourself permission to arrive fully here, to arrive here? And satsang is a precious time, so do whatever you need to do to make yourself comfortable and gently soothe the body and bring it into a state of relaxation. So much of our day we spend doing. But in this moment, can you give yourself permission to do nothing? Nothing at all. But to arrive here, to breathe, to feel, to experience this quiet peace, spaciousness, and inner sense of divinity. Inner sense of divinity. And so we're feeling what's here that's alive, that's vibrant, and free. And so throughout the entirety of the satsang, this is your job, is to be with your experience. Not to be with your thinking mind, but to arrive here. And to notice what is alive for you. What do you notice within your presence this moment? Are you comfortable? Are you uncomfortable? Are you fighting or are you arriving? Are you noticing what is good, what is true, what is beautiful about your heart and your nature? Or are you stuck in the past or stuck in the future? So to be in satsang is to step into truth, to come into this present moment, and to be here now. Be here now. And I'm going to invite each of you just to gently scan your body from the crown chakra all the way down to below the feet. And just take a couple deep, full breaths. Relaxing whatever needs to relax. Letting go of whatever needs to let go of. And be here in the preciousness of this moment. The preciousness, the simplicity, the radiant divinity. And so it's nice to be here with you all. And if you want, you can open your eyes or keep them closed, whatever makes sense to you. I'm going to speak a little bit about what's happening in the world. Because again, it seems like we're just on this brink. And last week, people were really exploding within the Sangha and within the greater world. It seemed like chaos was taking root and exploding, in a astrological sense. But I was happy to see that this week, even though the protests started to become greater and greater in size, I was happy to see that they were people were getting back to the manifestation of peace instead of violence. And I was checking in with the news, a number of times throughout the week, and what I saw, with protesters on one side and police on another, was it was simply a manifestation of violence, of division. Fists in the air on one side and maybe guns pointing in the other side. And if we want to speak the truth, if we want to be heard, we must speak in a way where others can listen. And so a great question for inquiry is, can I speak with and make peace? Can I speak and make peace with the places that I fear? Can I speak with the presence of peace? And can I make peace with the places I fear? I'll try that one more time. Can I speak and make peace with the places I fear? That's a great question. A great question. Um, how am I interacting with this world? If we want change to happen, we have to do the tantra of walking across the political aisle and speaking with our political enemies, but speaking to them like they are a human being. Let's have some fun here and imagine that I'm a right-wing nationalist and you all are bleeding heart liberals. And if I'm screaming at you and you are screaming at me, that's not speaking. We're not creating peace. We're not creating an understanding. If you're yelling at me with your fist and I'm yelling at you with my fist, we're not communicating. We're shouting. And if any of us have ever been in a relationship before, when you shout at your partner, they don't hear you. They don't hear you. They become defensive, and it's just hard for them. But there's this a different way of communicating, where we see that the other person is God, and we speak to them with love, with kindness, with compassion, even if they spit in our face. My mother, she told me this funny story today. She was in a spiritual group, a spiritual group about aging, and there's a man in the group who is on the different end of the political aisle than her, and has been giving her a really hard time throughout the group. And and today he told my mother, and my mother's like 70 something, and so he told her to shut up. And and then he went on to say that he's going through a divorce and he's in anger management class. And a little bit later on in the class, my mother said, whatever his name is, let's say his name's Bob. She said, Bob, if there's anything you want to share with me or speak to me about, I'll be happy just to listen. This is how we make peace. When someone tells us to shut up, we don't say, no, you shut up. That's what we say when we're in kindergarten, or middle school. When someone tells us to shut up, if we just stop and listen, oftentimes they will tell us They'll communicate to us what's wrong with them. What's wrong with them? They'll say, I'm going through a divorce and I'm having a really hard time. A really hard time. And when we listen to the other side first, we start to give birth to compassion. We give birth to compassion. And so if we're a protester and we're yelling at police, saying you're bad, we're probably not going to get very far. But if we look at the faces of the police and we see that they're angry, they're grumpy, but if we look more deeply into their eyes, we'll see that there's a good chance that they are scared. And I've been to riots before, and when there's more people than police, the police may hold up the shields and they may put on that mean face and act tough. But if you look into their eyes, you'll see they're scared. They're scared. And when your heart sees that another human being is scared, we soften inside. If you're at all connected to your Buddha nature, you soften. And from a place of softness, you might give the other person some space. And when you give them space, they're more likely to see you, see who you are and what your perspective is. And now we're beginning the process of communication. And so the inquiry for this week is, can I speak and make peace with the places that I fear? And sometimes we have to do this first within ourselves. First within ourselves. Maybe there's places within us that have unconscious bias, unconscious racist beliefs. And we don't want to admit this. And so we ignore it, but then the world stays as it is. But can we look inside and see, oh yes, I have unexamined bias, unacknowledged bias, unacknowledged racial beliefs. And so the willingness to look at the places within us that scare us. One of the most frightening things for a spiritual person is to admit they're angry, that they have anger within their consciousness. We have this idea that we have to be like a stone Buddha. But if we want to heal anger, if we want to transform anger, we have to make friends with it first. And so this is an important practice. Can I speak and make peace with the places that I fear? This is Tantra. Can I speak to the places that I fear inside with loving kindness and compassion? Can I make peace with the places that I fear inside? Whether it's unconscious bias, whether it's unconscious anger, whether it's an inner child that's scared or feels isolated or alone. Can I bring peace to these places? And so this is a great question for all of us right now on planet Earth. And am I willing to listen? Listen to people on the other end of the political spectrum. One of the definitions Buddha gave for suffering, what was very simple, it was division. It's just the word division. It's all suffering is division. And so when we have division within our consciousness, when there's division in the world and we're creating more division, we're creating more karma and creating more suffering. And so this is a great conversation for us, is where inward am I divided? And can I bring peace and compassion to my inner division? And so we have a couple folks in the room who have questions. So you're raising your hands here. I like this, raising our hands. I was once a high school teacher. And they didn't raise their hands. They just called me Brother Craig and just started shouting out in the classroom. So let's see. I have to figure out how to um, to unmute someone. Let's see if I can do this. Okay, Vishal, can you try to unmute yourself?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, Vishal, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've last time we talked, it was around sort of unworthiness and a sort of, how do you say, seeking love right outside of myself. And it's been beautiful. Like, I don't know, you gave me this perfect direction to where, yeah, I mean, I realized I was kind of using non-duality as a means of self-denial. Like, I was kind of trying to netty myself out of, the sense of unlovability. And that was exactly the thing to make it, that made it even more,
Yeah.
because yeah, that like it feeds off of self-denial, right? So like I actually went in, gave validation, treated it like a child, and just proved to myself that I am the love that this part of me was always seeking, you
Yeah.
know. And so now there's almost like this anxiety because it was such a core part of my being. It was like just a core part of my identity and like just how I interacted with the world. And now it's like, how do I don't know, I'm almost getting spooked about like what's my life going to be like now that I am the love that I seek, you know? Like like I know there's nothing to be scared of, but like it's still just like it's yeah, like all day I've just been like I just kind of see that call, to act from this new place. And it's like I almost want to go back to like this comfortable misery, this familiar like miserable place. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe you just had something to kind of say,
Oh,
like when that.
yeah, no, this is a great question. So, one of the things that Aurobindo used to speak about is those first amphibians, like there was, since the beginning of time, life was in the ocean. But the first amphibians that began to kind of, flop themselves up out of the water and onto the beaches, the air literally, it burned their new lungs, or their proto lungs and their gills and this and that. And evolution is hard, and it's messy, and it takes great courage. But if we look at the spiritual path, especially in terms of the way you're describing, so neti helps open you to vast spacious freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And then through love, like I was speaking to you about last time, helps to awaken your heart. And as you awaken your heart, the realization, it becomes different, or it becomes more inclusive rather. And so you have spaciousness with love. But in order for this love to take root on planet Earth, we need this third quality of Hara energy, which is strength. And so, when you see, okay, I am the love that I seek, this is what you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
Your new realization is I am the love that I seek. But in an outward manifestation, there's a part of you that isn't accustomed to that yet. So the ego psyche, it's not accustomed to being big. It's not accustomed to not grasping on or looking for love outside of yourself. And so you have to train it a little bit. You have to let it know, hey, it's okay. It's okay to be the love in the world. And there's this great fear that our human sensitive heart has about being the love that we are in the world. And the fear, it's really simple. Most of us think about, if we are being love, most of us think about bunny rabbit energy. It's vulnerable, and it can be squashed, it can be crushed. And so as we begin to, step out into this world, from this new space of love that we're getting accustomed to, our human heart sensitivity comes forward and says, I don't know if I can be this. I don't know if it's safe to be this. Because the way the ego heart, which is different than the spiritual heart, but the way the ego heart views love is something that can be given but also rejected and taken away. And so there's fear. There's fear, inherent fear within the ego about us being Christ-like, Buddha-like in the world. Is this fear that I'll be rejected, that I'll be hurt, that I'll be squashed, or people won't understand me. And what this fear does is it will invite you to look at a doorway. And the doorway is just like you described. On one side of the doorway is I can walk back into that old comfortable misery of being small. But if you walk through the doorway to the other side, in order to walk through the other side of being unconditional love in the world, you have to walk through the doorway of courage, great courage. And as you do, it gives birth to a sense of fearlessness. And so, not to make this, too out there, I'll make it very grounded and practical. Give yourself permission to be this love that you are. And as soon as you notice yourself getting anxious or shutting down or wanting to hide, being like a turtle and getting back, in his shell, I'm going to invite you just to sit with the burn of the anxiety, the burn of the fear, and in a real practical way, bring your awareness into your feet, bring your awareness into your belly. And I even like to look around, and just ask this question: is there any actual danger? Is there any actual danger? Like, do I actually need to shut down?
Oh.
Do I need to shut down? And you'll see, no, I don't need to shut down.
Yeah, no tigers in my living room.
Yeah, I'm just in my living room. And I'll take this a step further. So as we begin to open that door and walk through the doorway of fear into being a bigger sense of self, many of us have been trained to be small here on planet Earth. The ego is very comfortable being limited, being small, being weak, being petty, being, I'll use this word, rejectable, which is a really silly thing to think. And our ego is comfortable being rejectable. What our ego doesn't understand is that the depth of what we are is unrejectable. The depth of what we are is indestructible, to say that in a different way. And in order for us to discover our innate indestructibility, we have to go out into the world, at first discovering we're safe, we're okay, there's no real danger. But then here's the fun part, is at some point we will meet danger. Someone will spit in our face or say, you're no good. You think you're bigger than your britches, or whatever they'll say. And we have to ask ourselves in this moment, am I going to identify with a lesser perspective from someone else's ego? Or am I going to fall more fully in love with my divinity and claim what it is I am? The reason Jesus could say, the Father and I are one. The reason, some Christians can say that you and I are children of the Most High is because they believe in their divinity first. So we must realize our divinity first before we agree with someone else's opinion of us. And so in this realm of samsara, I'll ask this question again, is which God do you bow before? The God of truth, which is that each of you is a Buddha, or the God of delusion, which is saying each of you are small. You're a small, petty, powerless being. And if you want your awakening to stabilize, you have to say, oh, I'm a child of the Most High. I am a divine being. I'm a Buddha. And you have to have the courage to say it. And we don't say this from arrogance. We say this from the direct experience of looking into your heart, Vishal, and seeing, oh, this heart that I have is bright, it's brilliant, it's beautiful, it's divine, it's holy. Why did it take me so long to see this? I'm going to fall in love with this, and I'm going to give myself permission to be a star. A star. I'm going to give myself permission to be bright. And when you're bright, sometimes people will throw tomatoes. In fact, I'll even say this. The way God designs this world is the more brighter you become, especially in the beginning, people will throw tomatoes at you. And as they're throwing tomatoes, there's an intelligence behind them throwing tomatoes at you. That's God giving you an opportunity to take root in your strength. Now, if you identify with your ego and take it personally, it's very easy to go back into that old habit of being small, saying, oh, they are right. I'm just little. I'm no good. And then you will match them, on their level of thinking. Someone told me this once, that there's, what they call it, mirror neurons within our like DNA or something, where just from a survival perspective, we tend to match the energy in the room. So if the energy is harsh, we'll match it with harshness. If it's angry, we'll match it with anger. But in order for you to be a Buddha, you must be loving and know that you're loved. So you must realize what you are. And then you must take that a step even deeper. And you must claim your divinity and know what you are and identify with what you are in a way that leads to greater empowerment. If you're a Buddha, but you give your power away to the outside world, well, you won't be a Buddha for very long. You won't be a Buddha for very long at all. You'll just, you'll just match the collective. And so a Buddha takes courage, and a Buddha takes love, and a Buddha takes, like what you were describing in the beginning, neti. We need all three. Now, unfortunately, on the spiritual path, many people are afraid to be big. They're afraid to make any noise. They're afraid to love. They're afraid to know themselves. And this is why not many people awaken and actually stay awake, is because they don't do these next two steps. The first step in neti is fairly simple for a lot of folks. But then the great question is can I give myself permission to be love, to allow others to see me, and for me to see myself in the fullness of my glory, the fullness of my divinity? That's a huge step forward. And to get comfortable with that. And it's, it's like going on stage for the first time. It's like, oh my God, everyone's seeing me. And you can go like that and close your throat chakra and choke up, or you can take a deep breath and say, ta-da, here I am. Like that old Christian song I was singing from the previous retreat. Here I am, Lord. It is I, Lord. I hear you calling in the night. And I'm willing. I'm willing to see you. I'm willing to be you. I'm willing to live the truth. And of course, this comes from a place of humility. And so I hope that was helpful, my friend. Anything else you want to share?
No, it's actually, yeah, I think that's the issue of the humility bit, because sometimes because actually, like when you talked about that, getting challenged in a certain way where like people try to bring you down, that's actually happened to me in the past week. A very like kind of toxic person in my life kind of, was kind of up to her old tricks,
Yeah,
and there was kind of a moment where like, you know what, I am sick and tired of even giving these messages a second thought,
yeah,
you know
yeah,
and there was just this fear though of arrogance,
yeah,
you know
yeah,
like I don't want to end up being like that, like a spiritual ego, those
yeah.
people, right? that,
Yeah,
that,
yeah. Well, and I'll say this, Vishal. So, what you were describing in the beginning, where we're playing the natty natty game
hmm
while ignoring our human self. If we continue down that path and that path only, that's called spiritual bypassing. And spiritual bypassing tends to lead to aloofness
hmm
and arrogance or ignorance. Arrogance of thinking you're, greater than what you are, and ignorance in, just ignoring aspects of your own self and not being inclusive. And so when you come into your heart has a quality of gentle humility that just knows itself, but it's simple, it's kind, it's not arrogant. There's a very healthy sense of love that the Buddha had from himself to himself, that Christ had from himself to himself, that Mary has from herself to herself, where she looks inside and it's an honoring of one's divinity. I will
hmm
say this: one of the most humble things you can do is to see your own divinity. It's also one of the most obedient things you can do. Obedient in a sense of obedience to God. God wants nothing more than for you to see your divinity and to honor it. As when you love yourself, you're loving God. And the funny thing is the more you love yourself and you realize your divinity, God made this incredible intelligence in the heart. The more you fall in love with yourself, the more you'll fall in love with others. So the more you see your good, the more you'll see the good of another. And it works the opposite way as well, in a compassionate way. The more you see your wound, your shadow, your heartache, your confusion, your sadness, your anger, because we're being political this week, your racial bias and your shortcomings and your shadow, the more you're willing to look at that in your own self and forgive yourself, the more you'll be able to see it in another and forgive them as well. And I know I've said this often, but like when I look in my heart, my human self, my human ego, I can find literally every human flaw, character. What's the thing they say in AA? Character flaw, or I can't remember what it's. I think it's something like that. But um, every shadow, every violent act and confusion, I can find all those things within, this human consciousness because it's tied in with the collective. And so when you look inside in a deep way, humility just naturally comes forward. And one of the kindest, greatest gifts you can give to yourself is to see that you are divine, that you're holy, that you're good. One of the most healing things you can do for the planet is to see that you're good. And so I encourage you to play with this, to get comfortable with this. And, one of the things that, as I started to see my own divinity and wake up to my own divinity, it was so bright, so beautiful. It literally brought tears to my human eyes. Tears. And I call this falling in love with yourself. It wasn't tears of arrogance, like I'm so great. It was like, oh my God, the divinity that is within me is so good. It's so precious. It's so whole. And because I'm able to see it within my own self, I could see it in, I'll use this week's example, you know, uh, George Floyd and the officer who killed him. I can see that both are children of God. Both. Both. And if we can't see God in us and we can't see God in another, what's the use of this realization? What's the use of this path if we can't see love in ourselves and in another? And so you play with this, my friend, and you keep opening, and you have a precious heart, Vishal. See it, honor it, love it, fall in love more deeply with yourself. And we'll talk soon. Get comfortable.
Thank you, man.
Of course.
Thank you.
All right, bye. Okay, Richard, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. And I would love to ask today, gonna lower my hand, is so we're in but perhaps more people are awakening than ever have on the planet, and that's a really beautiful thing. But I
Yeah.
would love to know what kind of makes or breaks. I would say that there's still very few people who are abiding in head, heart, or gut. 2, 3, it's still rare.
Yeah.
And what makes or breaks? Like, what determines someone who's going to go through and awaken for real and abide and continue? What's the difference that makes the difference?
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. What's the difference that makes the difference? You know, the first question my teacher asked me when I met him, I was this young kid. I was a total punk. I've told the story a bunch, but I literally showed up to his house with bleached blonde dreadlocks, purple pants that were like 8 sizes too big, um, and some big floppy, t-shirt, looked like a skateboard punk. And he just looked at me and asked one question. He said, "Do you know how to work?" And my answer was yes. I know how to work. And on the path, when we're young, we think that spiritual awakening is for us, like it's a gift we get from God. But the way I've come to view it is spiritual awakening is about you waking up and becoming a slave to God, a slave to truth, a slave to love and compassion. And this question of do you know how to work? To me, that's the thing that really makes the difference in the individual. Like the ego, it's just lazy. Human beings are lazy. Human beings are easily frustrated. Human beings easily give up. Human beings are habitual creatures. I mean, the ego is simply just one giant habit. It's just one giant habit. And if we're going to step out of habit into that which is greater, we have to know how to work. And that's perseverance. It's not giving up. It's you knowing you, you loving you, and you not stopping till the end. Not stopping. And, like I was speaking with Vishal about, there's many people who are waking up right now, but they wake up because of grace. They think it's because of their own effort. That's a arrogant mistake, but they wake up because of grace, and then they fall back to sleep because they're unwilling to work. I could use a more spiritual term. They're unwilling to surrender moment to moment to moment to moment. When things get hard, it's just like Vishal said a moment ago. It's easy to go back to that habitual place of misery that we know. It's habitual and it's known. The ego is comfortable with habit. True nature is not habit. True nature is outside of habit. True nature looks at habit and says, that's hell. It's hell. So if you notice energetically when you step into habit, your chakras begin to close, they begin to feel numb, they begin to feel dead. And in order for you to remain open, you must surrender to the truth of your heart in every moment. So you have to know how to listen. If we're good Buddhists, we'd call this mindfulness. We would say that mindfulness awareness is the ability to listen to all 7 chakra centers, to listen to the body, and to notice, am I going asleep again? Which is something we will fight against for the rest of our life, is the force of going to sleep again. Or am I coming alive again? Am I coming alive? And so, are you willing to surrender moment to moment? Are you willing to work? Do you know who the boss is and what your job is on planet Earth? It's a great question. For me, the boss has always been God. And so I know God has endless work. And I value work. I'm happy to work. I'm happy to give. I'm happy to share. Happy to show up. But another way God wants us to work is to work internally. I'm happy to look at my shadow. I'm happy to look at where I dropped the ball. And so sometimes people have an incredible experience of awakening, but they have a big fat shadow and they're unwilling to look at their shadow. And the problem is about a shadow is like a warm blanket in the wintertime. It kind of just helps us go right to sleep. It sucks the energy out of us. It bleeds us dry. A shadow is literally like a hole we have in our energetic nervous system, and we're bleeding energy. And so the people who tend to go back to sleep, they tend to have big shadows. I'll be blunt here. They tend to be lazy, and don't take that personally. All human beings are lazy. It's like we have this within us. The other thing that Aurobindo spoke about was, he used to use this image of a lizard in the hot sun. They like just to lay there and just kind of warm their body and just go into that kind of numb state. And the ego likes that. Human beings like that. But in order to be alive, to be fresh, to be, a bodhisattva, we have to be willing to step into the mud and continue walking. And the beautiful thing about it is, at some point, we realize that the work we're doing, we're not doing it. When the surrender's so deep, it's God doing it in us, as us. And so then it becomes effortless. And so many people, when I say the word work, they say, oh, that sounds like effort. Muji said we're not supposed to effort, or whatever. It is, but it's important to effort in the beginning. But when the surrender is deep, then God starts taking over the work and doing it in us, as us. And it becomes effortless. It just becomes simple. And then if we look at that old habitual way of being, it doesn't call at us like the way the sirens, called to the sailors, to smash into the rocks. We look at that call and it looks like hell calling at us. And we're like, oh, I don't want to go into hell unless I'm showing up to bring more light and love. But I certainly don't want to go into hell to fall asleep. And so I hope that was helpful, Richard. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Craig.
Yeah, it's a funny thing, and I hope this doesn't come off as arrogant, because I certainly don't mean it this way. But when I was with my teacher, There was nothing that could get between me and him. I knew that I was going to be his successor. I knew it in my heart. When I was a child, I knew like all I wanted to do was to become enlightened. I knew that that's what this lifetime was about. And so this quality I had early on in the path was I had total faith that I'd wake up in this lifetime. Absolute faith. In fact, I demanded it of God. And you could say, well, that's really arrogant, Craig. And to me, I say, no, I just knew what this life was about. The greatest way you honor God is through you waking up and you living your gift and sharing your gift on planet Earth. The greatest way you dishonor God is through making yourself small and staying small. If you want to upset God, if you want to spit in God's face, listen to your ego all day, every day. Say, I'm small, I'm no good, I'm worthless. Nothing makes, I'm sorry, I just felt into, there's a whole realm of angels, and the angels have told me this. When you come into your true nature, the angels are just singing your praises, and their hearts light up and they shine love in every direction. But when you walk away from the truth, it literally makes your own personal angels cry. It causes them tremendous grief. It causes them heartache. It brings them great sadness to see you turn away from truth. And so it's important that we know who and what we are, and we honor what we are. We have a healthy sense of pride about our divinity. And many people are afraid of this because the Buddha said, don't be prideful, but don't be prideful of your ego, but by all means be prideful of your divinity. It's a big difference there. One comes with great humility and love, and the other comes with violence against your fellow human beings and God. And so thank you, Richard. That was a beautiful question. Okay, let's see what else pops up here. Here's a question from Kyle. Hi, Craig. I'm wondering about experiencing kundalini in parts of the body that are not the spine, such as the legs, the arm, and the face. Yeah, Kyle. I'm not exactly sure what you mean, but so kundalini flows through the central channel. But kundalini, when it's flowing through the central channel, and if all 7 chakras are open, you'll probably feel kundalini pouring out the palms of your hands, out of your fingertips, pouring out the top of your head, the back of your head, the bottoms of your feet. Should be flowing, through all the meridians. In Tibetan Buddhism, they call it the nadis. And there's these 10,000 nadis. They're like miniature chakras throughout the nervous system. And so the idea is with an energetic awakening, well, within any awakening, we are open, 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 open. We're open throughout the fullness of our being. And, part of mindfulness awareness is connecting with the body and just noticing, is there places within me that are dead, that are numb, that are cut off from the truth, that are cut off from this flowing aliveness, energetic expression of chi and prana and kundalini. And so the idea is with true non-duality is we want everywhere open. Open, open, open. And so we want to have the full experience. And so it's important, just to look at the body. If there's dead places, can you breathe into those places? Can you provide a sense of love, sense of compassion, a sense of softening? I did this yin yoga practice this morning, and I was just amazed at how wonderful I felt. I was just, it seemed like 10 trillion cells in my body were waking up and exploding with light. And so, yes, Kyle, there's 1,000,001 ways we can experience uh, this awakening in the body, throughout the body. And so open, open, open is the general teaching. Here's a question or comment from Adrian in New York City. Hi, Adrian. Hi, Craig. Is it common to feel disinterested in spirituality after many years of practice? After many years of practice with serious results. I've been a seeker for many years, almost 20. I've had magnificent kundalini experience for many years. There's been a revolution in my consciousness. I'm awake and life is fine. However, spiritual stuff doesn't turn me on too much these days. I feel I just want to get on living my life. I feel like my seeking days are over. Yes, Adrian, this is beautiful. So there comes a stage in the path when we stop seeking and we found God within us as us. And then we want to go live our life. But it's important, though, when you go forward and you live your life, that you're living life in alignment with your new truth. And it doesn't mean we all need to wear an orange sari and a turban and this and that. But the question, Adrian, is what is your gift? I know you have a gift. Uh, you've touched the lives of so many already through AA. And so, can you share your heart, your divinity, your radiance, and let the kundalini flow, say at an AA meeting? Adrian sometimes speaks to 600 people at AA meetings in New York City. He gives these big talks. And so, Adrian, the big thing is, can you share your heart, share your love with the world? Let your heart guide you going forward. So after you found the truth you're looking for, let your heart guide you. The goodness of your heart, the truth of your heart. And what you'll find is sometimes your heart will show up in a very simple, grounded, practical way. A hospital setting, speaking to friends, maybe more formally, giving a big talk at AA. But sometimes it just shows up when you're riding the subway and you smile at someone. You see an old lady walking down the street and she's having trouble carrying her groceries and you just give her a hand. Can you smile? Can you love? Can you share your joy and your big heart with the world? After you've realized the truth, there's a responsibility to share the truth. And again, that does not have to come about in a proselytizing way. It can simply be a smile or listening to someone who's having a hard day. Good to see you, Adrian. This is from Damon. Please open up to group conversation if possible. Enjoying this. Okay. I think I did that, Damon. Okay, let's see if there's anyone else here who has a question in the Facebook land. It's good to see you. I see a bunch of old friends are joining on Facebook. Okay. Let's see what other questions I have. I had a bunch show up. Hi, Craig. How can we discern the right course of action with so much political darkness gathering in the U.S. and throughout the world? Yeah, this question. I think I answered this one last week, but I'll bring it again this week because it's such a pressing topic. I spoke about this a little bit in the beginning. But the big thing, the right course of action with so much political darkness gathering in the U.S. and throughout the world, is can you listen to your heart? So when we come into a political time, the mistake most people come to or make is that they listen to their political mind or they listen to their emotional heart. By their political mind, I mean our philosophical mind, with all of our ideas of that we've all worked out in those silent arguments that we've had with no one. And so don't listen to your mind, don't listen to your emotional heart, but listen to the true heart. I had a sheriff deputy drive by my house the other day. He just drove by it, and what I felt, as I intuitively felt into his big car, was that he had a sense of feeling scared, feeling fear, not feeling loved and appreciated, and just being a policeman in the world right now. And I could feel that coming from his car. And so I sent him love. I sent him, words of encouragement. I sent him just this sense of, hey, like, I care. I appreciate your work. A good friend of mine just became a sheriff, and I fully support him. He's a great guy, a great fella. And it's easy, like I grew up on a skateboard when I was really young. And so we were always getting in trouble with the police because, back in the 80s, you weren't allowed to skateboard anywhere. It was like against the law in so many places. So we were always running from the police, being chased by the police. And I had friends who just, were, how can I say this appropriately on YouTube, were, choked out and beat up by the police, just as being kids and on a skateboard. And so for many years of my life, I had this great fear of the police. But as I matured, and I can see them as human beings, see them as divine beings, and I see them as scared beings as well. I can send them love. But if I hold on to my old beliefs or my old feelings, the political darkness will deepen within myself and within the world. But if I share love with people on the other side of the aisle, then light gives birth. Light gives birth. So the great question is, what is the truth in your heart, Kyle? And can you share the truth in your heart, your true heart? The true heart is the quiet voice within. The emotional heart is the loud voice within. And so don't listen to the loud voice, listen to the quiet one. Okay. One more question here. Hi, Craig. I'm feeling so scared and have hardly been sleeping. I'm laying awake and feeling the fear, but nothing seems to alleviate it, and it keeps coming back. I'm feeling more and more sadness and fatigue and fear, and have never experienced such an horrible insomnia. I'm losing the will to keep going, and I don't know what to do. Can you help me? This is from Christine. Christine, yeah, I struggled with insomnia for many years. And insomnia is really difficult because when we're not sleeping, it's easy to fall into really painful and difficult mental and emotional states. Some people even can become a little bit mentally ill, or really mentally ill, go into states of mania and this and that, or depression if we're not sleeping. And so one of the things that I learned to do through the years, if I'm not getting sleep, is just to lay down, like in Shavasana, corpse pose, which is a silly way to say, to describe just laying down flat. But so you lay down flat, like in corpse pose. And so I want you to imagine corpse pose is you're not moving, you're like a corpse. You're giving your body full permission to rest as deeply as it can. And I like to place one hand on my heart, one hand on my belly, and I'm breathing in deeply. I love you, to the place that feels scared or frustrated or fearful. And it's okay as I'm exhaling. So I love you, and it's okay. I love you, and it's okay. I've literally spent 8 hours laying in bed, for months at a time, not sleeping, just laying there in corpse pose, breathing in. I love you, and it's okay. I love you, and it's okay. And what I've learned to do is to give the body rest, even if sleep does not happen. The important thing here, Christine, is to not think about not sleeping. As soon as you think, oh my God, it's 2 a.m, I'm not sleeping. Oh my God, it's 3 a.m, I'm not sleeping. Oh my God, it's 4 a.m, I'm not sleeping. I'm going to be so tired tomorrow. You create more and more anxiety. In fact, this is true with any neurotic thought you have. So this is a time to do what Vishal was speaking about in the beginning. We play the neti game. I'm not the mind. I'm not the mind. So you're letting go of the mind. And you're just breathing in this sense of I love you and it's okay. I love you and it's okay. Boy, I'm having a really hard time holding on tonight. I just feel like I'm going to explode into emptiness here. Let me see if I can get a little bit more grounded. And so, Christine, I encourage you to play with this. To play with this. So you have to let go of your thoughts, surrender your thoughts about sleeping, and don't go into the emotional thought of I'm losing the will to keep going on and don't know what to do. If we're tired, you rest to the best of your ability. But we don't compound the problem by having anxious thoughts about not sleeping. Just let the body rest. You'd be amazed at how long the body can go without sleep if you are giving it rest. If it's getting no sleep and no rest, then you're going to be in great danger. But if you give yourself permission to be restful, and the mistake that people are making in 2020 is they're getting too plugged into their electronics and they're staying up all night, on electronics or disassociating with electronics. That's not rest. You need to close your eyes, shut the body down, shut the nervous system down, and just breathe. Unplug from everything and let the nervous system be rejuvenated. Okay. Let me see if I got all the questions. So I think that might be everything. Let me just check one more time. Yeah, I think that's it. So anyways, it's good to be with you all. And it looks like on Facebook, I posted this video on my personal Facebook page instead of my professional page. So I apologize for missing some of you. The replays should always be available on YouTube. A big thank you to everyone for making the donations and continuing to support the program, the Sangha, the community. I invite you to join us Wednesday nights if you want to meditate with us. We've had some wonderful meditations in the last number of weeks, and so those have been lovely. Richard, did you put your hand up again? Yeah, let's see what Richard has to say before we're done today.
Hey, just real quick, I wanted to say to Christine, because something came to me and it was really pushing forward.
Please.
Because it was the sleeplessness, but also being kind of really entranced in a fear state. And I was just thinking with the compounding insomnia, how difficult it can be to be present with a fear state that's overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I was just going to encourage her to potentially have a session with you or whoever is on her healing support team to kind of join with someone to increase her bandwidth to process that fear. Because that's going to ease things up a lot too. So I just wanted to say that real quick. Thanks, Craig.
Yeah, Richard, that's so good. It's important, when we get stuck in a state and we're having trouble getting out of it. Sometimes I forget. I always had my teacher just right there, and he would help guide me out of that. And so it's important to have a support team, whether it's a healer, an energy worker, body worker. Sometimes the healer is a bathtub, a bubble bath. And sometimes it's our partner. Sometimes it's our spiritual teacher or guide. And so it's so true when we do get in a really tough state to reach out and get some support. So thank you, Richard, for the reminder. That's good. That's good. And so sending you all love, my heart's with you. And I'm going to encourage you just this next week, while our world has just gotten so, it was crazy with the pandemic, and now it's like, crazy on steroids. Send some more love out into the world. Share your hearts with the world. Smile more. Pull that mask down in public and show people your teeth. Smile. Give some friends some words of encouragement. And if someone's having a really hard time, listen. Listen to someone. See if you can de-escalate. Some of their trauma, some of their pain, some of their, that hyper intensity. We all need to support each other this time, because we're really in this crisis where the world could really go either way. And there's this one movie, I can't remember what it was, had Bill Murray in it, and they asked him, like, hey, like, Bill, like, how you doing? He's like, I don't know. I could go either way. It could just fall off either way, one way or the other. It could go really good or it could go really bad. I could go into crazy land, and I feel like the world's right at that tipping point. And so, smile to your neighbors, and let's invite more peace and healing, and yes, greater conscious action. So thank you all. It's been an absolute pleasure. Bye for now. Good night.